If you ever hear the term retro video games or old school video games, a system that would pop up into your mind is most likely the NES or the Nintendo Entertainment System. The NES is what revived video games. It's what started the Super Mario Bros. Franchise and many more great franchises. Hey, I'm Chris, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo Entertainment System. In the late 70s and early 80s, Atari was the leading video game company in the world. It had outstanding sales and great games. But in 1983, consumers became more interested in personal computers rather than video games. The revenue of video games was about $3.2 billion and then dropped to about $100 million. That's a 97% decrease when you do the math. A big cause of the video game crash was because of the game E.T. for the Atari 2600, and consumers were disappointed and angered how the game was terrible when they expected it to be a good game because the movie was so great. So they kind of lost hope in Atari, it seems. They were losing money by manufacturing games and systems when less and less people started buying video games. But then, when the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, people went crazy for that video game console. It sold millions of systems and millions of games, and made the stock market of video games bounce right back up. Nintendo was founded in Japan, and they established many Nintendo companies around the world. Nintendo of Japan didn't create the Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo of America did. In Japan, they had the Famicom, which was the Japanese NES, and the Famicom was only in Asia, while the NES was in many other countries like Germany and the UK. The first set of the NES was the Deluxe set, which came with the NES, 2 controllers, a gray zapper gun, Gyromite, and a Rob the Robot, which stands for Robotic Operating Buddy, which played the game Gyromite with you, which was pretty cool. And over the years, Nintendo came out with more sets like the Control Deck, the Basics set, the Sports set, and the most common NES set, the Action set, which came with NES, 2 controllers, an orange zapper gun, and Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt game. The NES had many great games, and the best-selling game was Super Mario Bros., which sold a whopping 40.24 million copies. Super Mario Bros. Is a 2D side-scrolling adventure game where you have to rescue a princess named Toadstool, or which most people call her, Peach. In the game you have to jump over holes, avoid enemies like Goombas, who are just basic enemies, Koopas, which if stepped on, they go into their shells and you can kick it. But be careful, if it hits a wall it will come back after you, and you can get hurt and possibly die. There's Lakitus, who throw down spiky enemies, Hammer Bros, who throw hammers, etc, etc. And of course, defeat Bowser 8 times, but you can actually go to warp zones to skip worlds and fight Bowser only at the last level, world 8-8. But you only do that if you suck at the game and you're a coward. There were 2 more Mario games released, which was Super Mario Bros. 2 and Super Mario Bros. 3, which is arguably the best Mario game of all time. And there was a Mario game that was released only in Japan. That was Super Mario Bros. 2: The Lost Levels. There are many more amazing NES games like Legend of Zelda, a 2D action adventure game, Tetris, a puzzle game where you move and rotate blocks to complete lines. And fun fact, people in Japan and China mainly bought the Famicom to play Tetris. There was also Excite Bike, a 2D racing game on a BMX dirt bike, and many more games, including arcade ports like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong. By now, we should know the NES is one of the most, if not the most, iconic retro video game system of all time. Second would be the Atari 2600. But now, let's pop in a game, plug in the controllers, and power this system on and play a game.
Two hours later.
I think it needs time to load.
3 hours later. 3:28 a.m. 6.5 hours later.
Oh wait, blinking red light! If you ever had an NES, you've experienced this problem before. This is the blinking red light and blue screen error. The blinking red light means there's something wrong with the 72-pin connector. The 72-pin connector is what your cartridge is connected to when you put it in the system, and it sends the information to the system. Usually if you get the blinking red light, it means that the Nintendo 72-pin connector has dust on it, and it is not able to register the game. But this is pretty easy to fix. You can clean your game with isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip, and rub the Q-tip with the isopropyl alcohol on it along both sides of the board, and then let it dry and test it. And to make sure you really get the pin connector clean, you should get the NES cleaning kit to clean the NES pin connector. Or you can do the classic blow on the cartridge, but people say this isn't the best idea because your cartridge is getting spit on the motherboard when you blow onto it. Another way is to power off the NES, put your fingers on both sides of the cartridge, and gently wiggle and pull the cartridge out slightly. Thank you Rinri Game for finding this out. May your channel rest in peace. But this isn't always the case. The 72-pin connector bends over time, and then it's not able to read the games at all. If your pin connector is becoming bent, you need to resort to buying a new 72-pin connector and replacing it, or bring it to a place that repairs old systems and get it fixed. The NES isn't the most reliable, but there's actually another model of the NES. This NES is called the top loader. The top loader loads games by putting cartridges into the top of the system, and the original NES model is a front loader, and that's where the original model flawed. You see, with the NES front loader, you had to push it in, but then you had to push it down. This caused the 72-pin connectors to bend because there's a tray that goes down, but the pin connector doesn't go down with it. And like I said moments ago, it will cause a blinking red light, and you have to get it repaired for the system to work. But with the top loader, all you have to do is just put it in the system and power it on. No extra pushes needed. But there's just one problem with the top loader. It only uses RF. RF, which stands for radio frequency, has lower quality image than your standard RCA AV cables, so the quality is worse on the top loader, but not terribly awful. But you can get the top loader AV modded, but you couldn't do that back then, and plus it's quite pricey. But since we're on the topic of video quality, the NES video quality was really good compared to the Atari 2600, but the Sega Master System had better video quality than the NES. So yeah folks, that was the Nintendo Entertainment System. This video game system was a major success and sold over 61 million units worldwide. The NES is what revived video games. It's what ended the video game crash of '83. So if you're someone who loves video games and you ever come across an NES, take the time to look at it and think, man, this system is the reason why we still have video games today. Because if the NES was never released, then the video game market may have never came back. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing. Bye.